Hello, everyone. It's Dan King here, as always, with another Fireside chat. Very excited to be bringing you Spencer Sheinin, CEO of Financial Shift today. He is also the best-selling author of Entrepreneur Numbers, The Surprisingly Simple Path to Financial Clarity. Always excited to be interviewing another creator CEO here on the show. Particularly excited to bring you Spencer's unique journey. Spencer, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Dan. Super stoked to be here. And thanks for doing this podcast and creating value out in the world. So I'm stoked to be here.
Well, you're more than welcome. So Spencer, would love you to just start out with maybe a little bit about your why, your mission, and a little bit about what you do in the world.
Yeah, sure. I always love the question of what's my why. So my why is I believe entrepreneurs can change the world. And my role is to help them through their financial blind spot. I just think, the entrepreneurial journey and what entrepreneurs can bring to the world, and whether that's actually going out to try and intentionally change the world, or whether that's just changing their corner of the world and creating a really great environment for employees. Let's be honest, there's a lot of bad employers out there. And there are also a lot of employers who specifically make efforts to create a good environment for their employees, building leaders so that their employees become leaders elsewhere or whatever. That I'm super passionate about that. And I just always see this fight with the numbers and not understanding them and hating accounting and not knowing what to do with it. And if you indulge me, I'll share kind of the moment when Shift Financial kind of was born. I had exited. I've had a few different businesses. I've been an entrepreneur. Yes, of course, I'm a CPA as well, but I've had a few different bricks and mortar businesses. I had a manufacturing business, a construction business, a cold storage business. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I exited all of those. And I was kind of in this phase where I'm like, well, what's next? I didn't really love any of those businesses. It just didn't feel right. And I saw this speaker. He was a finance speaker, and he was brilliant. He was talking about how banks look at your books versus how you look at your books, if you even look at your books. And he was brilliant, but he spoke fast and he was being technical. And my CA brain was like, I've got really working hard to keep up. And kind of everybody laughed because at one point I corrected one of his formulas, and everyone's laughing because it was a room full of entrepreneurs who were like, we don't even know what's going on, and Spencer's over there correcting him. And so that was kind of funny. And then one of the guys came up to me after, and he's like, and I know him from before. He's like, hey, can you put this in my business? Because I know it's important, but I don't understand any of it. And it was just like, oh, these are different languages. Being an entrepreneur is one language. Accounting's another language. I happen to speak both. So how do I create a system to make it simple, easy, and intuitive for entrepreneurs to really extract the stories out of their financials? Your books are dying to tell you a story. And if you're not listening to the story, it's like you're fighting with handcuffs on. So that was kind of the birth of Shift, and a little kind of tiny bit of my background and why I'm doing what I do today. And just because I also love working with entrepreneurs, super fun people.
Yes. Love that. And want to pick up on one specific way that you expressed your journey. You talked about how you speak entrepreneur and you speak accounting. You speak two different languages.
Yeah.
I think it's a very powerful mental model. Like, we think about when we're running a business, what should we outsource and what should we insource?
Yeah.
And the reality is that accounting truly is a language that most entrepreneurs don't speak.
Yeah.
And we know how hard it is to learn a language like in our personal lives, right? So why would you go through all the pain and effort to learn an entirely new way of being and seeing the world when you have someone that already knows what they're talking about and has just a tremendous amount of experience and are really fluent in the language?
Yeah, I totally agree. The kind of the analogy I like using is, there's one time where I was actually really quite sick. I couldn't work. I was staying home. And any women who are listening, don't worry, it wasn't a man cold. I was actually sick. Okay. And I know that because at the time I was dating an emerge doctor, and she's like, if you're still sick tomorrow, I'm going to send you for an MRI, or I'm going to send you for some tests. And one of the tests I got, sorry, not an MRI, an EKG. See, I can't even get the medical terms. And so I was sick. I got the EKG. She goes, bring it back to me. She looked at it. And if you've ever seen an EKG, it's just a bunch of squiggly lines, right, on a piece of paper. And she's like, oh my God, you might have pericarditis. So I'm like, what? Well, an EKG is a technical document. There was a technician who did it, and then it was a doctor had to diagnose it. And it's the same thing with your books. There's different skill sets in building, doing the technician, being the bookkeeper, being the controller, but then diagnosing books are a totally different thing again. So
Yes.
I don't have any skills in reading an EKG. She had to read it for me. And I never want to learn how to EKG. I'm not a doctor. Same thing with the books, though. It's like it is a technical, like financials. I went to school for 3 years to learn how to write, create, and interpret financial statements. Most owners didn't. So let's not try and do that. That's one of kind of the big conflict points for entrepreneurs. It is the language problem.
Yes, yes. And I think similarly, there's this problem of what do we do in-house and what do we outsource? One of the ways that I tend to think about it with clients is, if someone's fluent in a language, you want to rely on their expertise, but you want to learn like enough of it that you can understand when you're hiring the right person. You want to be able to speak at sort of a basic level, but don't try to become fluent. And when it comes to something as important as our financials, we got to have someone who's fluent helping us out.
And not to talk about all the negative things, I want to talk about where this can be really powerful. One of the other major problems for smaller businesses, if you're kind of in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even up to about $10 million, you think about building a house, right? We all instinctively know you've got a general contractor, you've got a bunch of skilled subtrades, and you've got a laborer too. They're hauling the lumber, carrying cement, whatever. We all know that that's intuitive, but the same thing exists in an accounting department, but we often don't realize it. There's the transactional, that's at the bottom. That's the bookkeeper's role. There's the reporting and compliance function. That's the controller role. Reporting, we all get. It's your financials. It's your cash flow forecasts and budgets. But the compliance is what's often missed. That's setting up the chart of accounts in a way that allows you to extract the stories. It's your policies and procedures, stuff even accountants find boring, okay? And at the top is the strategic function. That's the CFO, director of finance. But here's the thing. If you're a $2 million business, $3 million business, you can't afford everybody. So what we often do is we end up hiring a bookkeeper to run our entire accounting department. Well, go to the house analogy. That's like hiring a laborer to build your entire house. They probably know some plumbing. They probably know some electrical, but you need those skilled subtrades applying their craft. You need that even with a small business too. You really do. So that's where a lot of businesses get stuck. Not only they don't diagnose it, but they're going to the wrong person. They're going to the laborer, expecting the laborer to do everything.
Yes, yes. So let's transition to the positive. Let's transition to the solution.
Cool. Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. So I always think about and I think it's easiest here to really talk about two solutions. Number one is data visualization, charts, graphs. We see images faster than we see numbers and letters. Our brain, I don't have the stat in front of me. I want to say it's like 80 or 90% of the information transmitted in our brain is done in visual format. So, if you look at a set of financials, it's like, oh my God. And then you got to look at the trends over the last 8 months and it's pages and all of this stuff. It's complicated and confusing. But if you just sort of imagine one single line, these are our sales or these are our expenses over time, and another line compared to our budget, maybe a third line compared to last year. Well, all of a sudden you can see if there's a spike or a dip. You don't have to be an accountant and say that looks weird, right? So if we can solve this by using data visualization, that's one of the biggest things. Like I speak about this a lot, and I've got a lot of kind of charts and graphs and pictures, and I'll give them 10 seconds and I'll be like, okay, I want to know which 3 items were most over budget on your P&L.
Yeah.
And I'll click through, I'll give them 10 seconds and they'll be scrolling and nobody's ever gotten. I had one person come close. And then I do the same thing in a bar chart with red bars going for the worst 5 items. Well, if you show a picture of the right thing, every month I get a picture of my 5 expenses that are most over budget. It takes me, and at 10 seconds, you can all see them after 5 seconds. Like, I'm bored, I know the answer. So the right charts using data visualization is one absolutely critical piece. Pie charts, bar charts, line charts. Doesn't matter what kind of chart, you should be able to look at it and instantly know what it's trying to tell you. So that's the first thing I always offer. The second thing are the levers in the business. For non-financial people in particular, this I find really takes the complexity out. I think the problem with financials, they're too complex. We need them. They got to be right, but they're too complex for using them. There's actually only 3 things we can do to increase the profitability in any business. Don't care how big or small, don't care how many divisions, departments, any. There's only 3 things. There's 3 levers on the income statement. You can increase sales, either through increasing price or throughput. You can decrease your cost of goods. And if anybody struggles, let me see if I have an example here. Anybody struggles with the concept of cost of goods, it's one of the only accounting terms I can't get away from. But let's just say, this is my whiteboard eraser. The cost of goods putting this together is going to be the bottle, the sprayer, the front label, the back label, the product inside, the box it ships in, plus all the labor to put it together. So if there's batching to be done, filling, all that stuff. So those are the cost of goods. So you can decrease cost of goods either by decreasing your cost, being more efficient with labor, or you can hold it the same as sales grows. That's it. Or we can decrease our overhead expenses. So the difference between cost of goods and overhead is like your rent. If you have a receptionist, accountants are overhead, sales team are overhead, all of the things that directly go into the product or service. Those are the only three things you can do on the income statement to make more money. That's it. So when we start to think, there's a million strategies to do that, but there's only three things. So when we're looking at our income statement and confused, it's like, which lever do we need to pull, right? If cost of goods are screwed up, there's no point in pulling the sales lever because you're not going to make more money if your costs are out of whack. Everybody always focuses on expenses because it's probably the easiest to understand. But if we've already squeezed the lemon, why are we squeezing for another $100 or $500 when we've got a $50,000 cost of goods problem, or our sales, we're bringing in the wrong kind of sales? Now, you can have strategies that overlay two, not too many of them overlay all three. You can have strategies that impact more than one of the levers. But if you can keep just coming back to which one of these three things do I need to change, that just makes it so much simpler and easier. And on the balance sheet, real quick, I won't get into it because balance sheets confuse people even more. There's only a few things you can do there. You can collect your money faster, you can turn your inventory faster, or you can pay a bit slower without upsetting anyone. Capital assets you can use more efficiently, a little bit harder. And some people will say debt, but I'm not going to get into that argument today. So those are the only things you can actually do. And if we can keep bringing it back, and this is where the accountant's job should come in. This is where I think we as an industry have failed entrepreneurs is which lever should I pull and why? So rather than having to deal with everything in the financial statements, you've got a cost of goods problem and you've got an accounts receivable problem. Let's solve those two because they're the biggest, and then we can let go of everything else until next month. So those are my quick and dirty without visual aids to help you kind of how to approach it a little differently. And by the way, on the Entrepreneur's website, there's a bunch of free downloads and resources that actually will, you can just literally, they're no charge. You can just go on and see a few things of what I'm talking about. There's lots of different examples and a few videos as well.
Awesome. And we can post those in the show notes for folks too. So it's interesting how, and I wonder whether this is the case for other professional services like accountants, there may be a branding issue, right? So when we think about accountants, when an entrepreneur thinks about accountants, not only is it necessary, not only is there perhaps the issue of, I don't know that I understand what they're saying. Accountants haven't really branded themselves as these strategic players, right? Who can help you with these vitally important insights. Is that fair?
I think there's two problems. Number one, give me a few words to describe accountants. Don't worry, I've heard them all. You can't offend me. Go ahead.
Brainy.
Keep going.
Yeah. Annoying. Sorry.
Annoying. Perfect. Keep going.
Yeah.
Give me one more.
One more. Very detail oriented. How about like risk averse, rule following, right? Boring, all of those things. Give me 3 words to describe entrepreneurs. Creative, fast,
exciting. How about dynamic, risk-taking, rule-breaking? Now, you can only see my chest right now, but we are so opposite. And that's why I'm schizophrenic, right? Because I'm both. We're so opposite in terms of how we show up to things that imagine now you've got a business problem on the table. You got the entrepreneur and the accountant talking about it. We're looking at it through such different lenses. The accountant's thinking we don't have enough money. We've got a problem. This is an issue. And the entrepreneur's like, okay, well, that's just, we're out of cash, whatever. Well, this happens all the time. Let's move forward. So that's one is we just look at life so differently. That's one of those differences. The other thing that I don't think it's a branding problem. I think it's partly an understanding of like, would you go see an optometrist if you blew out your knee? No. We all call ourselves accountants, but a lot of accounts have different specialties. So like a year-end external accountant may be really good at doing year-end reviews to give you your financials on letterhead so you can give it to the bank. Some are going to be good at taxes. Some are going to be preparing reports. Some are good at mergers and acquisitions. Some are, and our specialty is really extracting the stories so you can make better decisions. So accountants, yes, have branded ourselves as accountants, but within there's so many sub-disciplines, just like a doctor would be or a lawyer. You wouldn't just go to a random lawyer. You wouldn't go to a family law lawyer when you're starting a new business. I mean, you might do it for some family planning reasons, and you wouldn't go to well, I was going to make some comment about a separation, but I'll stay away from that one in case it's too close to home for anyone. But you go to the right doctor, and we often don't know which accountant to go to. And, we're stuffy and boring and risk averse and all the things that are the opposite of entrepreneurs. So it's just there's an inherent conflict.
Yes. Makes total sense. I'd love to delve into the schizophrenia, a little bit more.
Sure.
I think it is quite unique that you bring these two mindsets to the table. And I think something else that's unique for an accountant, it isn't just that you speak entrepreneur, you also speak human as well. You really care deeply about the people in your own business, and those are the clients that you work for. I'm curious how that sort of side of you developed. Was there a moment or a story that you could tell?
I don't know if there was a moment. I know that it's a really interesting question. Like for me, when I think about our business and what we did, and we're not the only ones that do this now, but we don't track vacation, take vacation. We're fully remote, and it's work your own hours, get the job done. We track the performance, and we have high standards, but we attract the people that like that flexibility. So we have a new controller starting with us, I think in a couple of weeks. And I did the final interview, and she's like, one of the things I really loved is I'm a new mom. And so I'm going to really want to be there for the morning time and and I'm happy to work slightly later or whatever. So, we really we embrace that. And if somebody wants to move to Costa, it's hard to move right now, but if somebody wants to move to Costa Rica for 4 months, cool. And there are some meetings, of course, and you have to be there for clients, of course, but you can manage your own schedule. So, and I just think by putting people in an environment where they can create a life by design, they're going to be more productive, more happy. And it's win-win-win. We spend more, if, we all know what do you do most other than sleep? Sleep is what we spend most of our time doing. Second most is usually working. Well, why not be happy and enjoy? So there wasn't a spark moment for me on where that came from. But I just think it's so important for all of us. I want to be happy and have fun. And I want there to be a lineup at the door of people who want to work at Shift, great people, because we've created that environment rather than people trudging to work. We've all heard the stories of somebody going over the top, doing that extra mile. They usually do that when they're working for something that they're really connected to.
Yes. And not just have you created an environment in which people feel that sense of autonomy, in which they feel, a sense of empowerment. You got a why behind it, right? You got a sense of mission. And I think that's also unusual in the accounting industry. It's very rare that I would talk to an accountant and they would start out in our first conversation, as you did when we first met, talking about your why. Pretty distinct, I'd say. Yeah,
and it's one of the things, I wrote my first book, and that was more of a business development book and just helping entrepreneurs. People who know me say that, first of all, they hear my voice when they read it, but it sounds like me. So just the conversational nature, it's not a technical book. But the next book that I'm writing is more of a passion project for me, and it's around this why. And it's called Entrepreneur Cases. I'm still working on the subtitle, but I think it's overcoming the odds, creating success and impact. And the idea is, as an entrepreneur, we can all relate to the time when we didn't think we were going to make it through and we were stuck. And we were oh, there's no way out of this. We're going bankrupt. I've been there more than once. And you're nodding, we all get it, right? And so it's a compilation of stories. I think it's going to be, each story will be 4 to 6 pages, probably somewhere in the 40-ish stories. And I'm closing in on halfway done those stories of entrepreneurs who you thought, or in the moment, they think it's not going to work. A friend of mine, and it's really sneak preview, I don't really talk about this much, but a friend of mine who it was involved in Saks underwear in the early days. And, his predecessor business to that, he sat down at the table with his wife and his parents and was yeah, we're probably going bankrupt tomorrow. And his parents had loaned him basically their life savings for this business. Now, he worked himself out of it and he solved that problem. And then he got involved in Saks underwear. And, the story, it's a really success story. But for an entrepreneur like that, you know, we all look at other brands or other businesses and go like, oh, they're doing so good. There's a story behind the stories. So for me, part of the heart is like, how do we inspire entrepreneurs who are feeling that way? Because sometimes just knowing that other people have had these difficulties makes it easy for us to go through our own. You're not alone. Like, we all have these problems. So it's designed to be an inspired book and an inspired story. It's just, you know, read a chapter or two at a time. And it's like for entrepreneurs, emerging entrepreneurs, for family members to get like, oh, what are you really going through? Okay. For employees who think the entrepreneur is always making more money than anyone and working less. No. Usually the entrepreneur is working more and making less. Like, let's be honest, right? So, so that's where the heart part all comes to me, around the inspiration and actually changing the world. And one other quick sneak peek on that one. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling a bit, but like the story, that the outcome I hear, I always ask about impact. Like, what impact, what legacy do you want to leave? And the majority talk about, I want to impact my employees' lives and their family lives. I want to, one of them who owns multiple business now, because we started with some of our employees 30 years ago as the most junior role, and now they are the president of one of our companies. And now they're doing that to the next generation of leaders. And so entrepreneur, like, that's where the why comes from. That comes where the heart comes from. It's like, wow, you're actually so positively changing people's worlds. When there's so much complaining and so much pointing and so much negativity, I like to really find that light and bring it forward.
Yeah. And that there's such vulnerability in those stories when we can really share what's actually happening for us. Other people feel it genuinely. And sometimes, because there's this notion, there's certain mythologies around entrepreneurship. We talked about accounting branding earlier. We want to talk about entrepreneur branding. You know, we've done a pretty good job with it, right? But one of the downsides of that has been people don't always fully appreciate. Risk-taking is not the right word, because there are many entrepreneurs that are smart and don't take risks, but I don't think people fully appreciate the challenge. The battle. That's a good way of putting it. And the sleepless nights. And the other thing is, you know, most entrepreneurs, one of the biggest stressors that I had when I was going through difficult times, and as I'm talking to all these different entrepreneurs, is they worry about their employees. Like, you know, when I had my most difficult time, I've got like 60 employees who rely on me for them to have a job for their families. You know, like that to me, I carried that a lot. And a lot of the other entrepreneurs were like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my staff? What am I going to do with my suppliers? What am I going to do with my partners who have all relied on me? So, you know, it's not all about making money and having a fancy boat. That's right.
My fancy boat is a 17-foot canoe, just for the record.
It's very Canadian of you.
Very Canadian, yeah.
Yes, no, these are responsibilities that are heavy burdens. And on the plus side, when you experience them, you grow so much, right? If you've had that moment of having to make payroll, if you've had that moment of the weight of the world feels like it's on my shoulders, I think it's my experience and those of many clients has been that what doesn't kill us does make us stronger, right? We are markers that we're examples of anti-fragility in the world.
I'm going to get the saying wrong, but it's like a smooth sea did not make a strong sailor, or something like that. Like, you know, good sailors become good because they face waves and strong winds and almost capsize. You know, once you almost capsize a couple times, you learn how to not capsize, right?
That's it. Spencer, as we, I love it. As we come towards the end of our time together, I'm curious to get to know the human beyond Shift Financial a little bit more. When you're not working, when you're not on this mission to change lives, what do you do for fun?
I love that. So I've always been drawn to sport. Like, kind of, I always call my two passions like entrepreneurship and sport. And so I'm actually in an interesting transition. We were chatting before we started. We've both had some unhappy backs at times, and mine's pretty good right now. But I've been an ultra runner, and I've always loved doing ultra distance marathons. I've done about a dozen races and a dozen or more just fun adventure runs that are ultra marathon distance. And most people don't think fun and ultra distance go in the same sentence, but for the right, you know, remember, I've got the crazy multiple pronged mind. So, but I've been struggling with that because of my back, and I don't think I want to keep doing that. So I'm actually in a weird transition where I'm actually going to get back in the climbing gym. I think that's going to start, and more biking are kind of the, although it's really pouring outside right now. I'm in Vancouver, but I'm my Zwift trainer, so I've got kind of the opportunity to ride multiple places in the world with my avatar. But sport is kind of the other thing, and community. So those are kind of the three pillars for me. And but that's me when I'm not working. I try and put in some pretty good semblance of balance is important to me at this point in my life. Younger days, I might have put in a few more hours, but I'm getting close to, I'm not 50, I'm 47, 48 this weekend, actually. And so the balance is a little bit better than maybe it once was.
And just briefly, I'm curious, what does community look like for you?
Yeah. So for me, when I reflect on the times when I've enjoyed community the most, it's being that 6 or 8 or 10 people that you kind of know what you're doing on the weekend, or, if you're going to put together a group trip or whatever, whether it's a group of couples or individuals, whatever. And the people that know you so intimately, and that you don't have to have that guard up, and you can be like, so for me, it's been a lot of that business community, and when things were tough, saying, look, I don't know if I'm going to make it through, and not being afraid to say it, and knowing that those people are going to be like, well, let's sit down and let's talk about it. Do you need help with a plan? Do you just need someone to like get it out of you so that you can go back to work? You don't have, I can't vent in front of my staff. It's just those people. And for me, it tends to be a small number just because, it's just life, and you can only get to that level with so many people. But just community for me is just having each other's back, no matter what, no masks, and just being honest with our weaknesses, what we're scared of, and not being afraid it'll ever be used against us, and it's only there as a safety net. So that's how I think of community.
It's beautifully put. Well, Spencer, appreciate you a ton.
You tell me what you think of, what's your community? I told you I might ask you a question.
Yeah. Absolutely. So community for me fits into a bunch of different categories. Like you, it's entrepreneurial friends. Yeah. I'd say for me as well, it's spiritual friends. So folks who either share my interest in meditation or spirituality otherwise, because those are all kinds of other types of conversations. Yeah. There is some overlap between those two communities. Yeah. And then I'd say for me as well, I used to be a lawyer. It's a deep, dark secret. There's all kinds of friends still from law school. They haven't cut me off entirely, even though I'm the crazy entrepreneur one. And I'm also an executive coach. And so I'd say that there's friends who share that love of psychology, who are either coaches, therapists, people kind of on that wavelength.
Love it. Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I was curious about that for you as well.
It's my pleasure. Happy to share. And I was just going to say to close, Spencer, I so appreciate that you are trilingual. You speak accounting, you speak entrepreneur, and you speak human. All pretty damn important languages. So appreciate your contribution to the interview. Deep insights, your dynamism, just the speed with which your brain moves. It's exciting to have a chat with you. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks, Dan. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me.